What's good, everybody? Hope y'all are doing well and staying safe. I want to go over if endurance is good for Warframe, and how I'll be looking from this point of view is of somebody that is against endurance, with most of the experience coming from my actual comment section. Now, the argument on whether only a small amount of players care about endurance is something that I feel like a lot of people overlook one main thing, and that is, did you ever stop to think that because these suspensions have been going on for 7+ years, that players would quit after receiving these, and over time this would become a forgotten thing, and the only people left to teach the game would be non-endurance runners, so naturally it just stays to that until some random poor soul pushes themselves too far too fast and gets a trigger and then they quit. So what we are seeing in the game is the result of 7+ years of suspension, and what else do you really expect it to look like? The argument about loot being flooded into the market is honestly a dead-on arrival one. I actually have done a video on that. I'll have it in the pinned comment, but the TLDR is that the overall loot gain per hour is worse, if not too comparable, depending on how casual to hardcore you are. The more min-maxy you are in the game for other resource farming and such like that, the worse it actually becomes to do endurance. But the more casual you are, the more it evens out. And this is going from the perspective of looking at doing missions for 1 to 2 hours as the most for casual play. Because in my subjective opinion, once we're starting to reach the 45+ rotational rewards, that's when we're hitting the point of actually endurance. Next question would be, is it healthy for players? Well, on solo you can pause so that you can take care of yourself for as long as you need to. Group runs are a little bit more rougher to do, but you can run rotations in groups, and even though yes, there should be a pause in my opinion for friends and invite only, but that's a whole nother topic for another day. Running rotational groups still allows you for the opportunity to do things like sleep, eat, shower, all the etc. of self-care that you may need to do, and go to work and everything, if it's planned for accordingly. This is why we do have different sections for when it comes to, even though they don't matter at the end of the day, world records and Warframe, we do have different sections for group play and solo play, which does kind of follow me into the next one, and that is the game is not made for it. Now, yes, they don't do endurance events anymore, but that's because they usually ran leaderboards alongside it, and what the events became were whoever could bug or exploit it to the point to where no one could actually stand a chance. So it's understandable why DE couldn't do it anymore, is because they couldn't make a stable enough game to support leaderboards in a fair position. And that's the nature of gaming, though. It's not an endurance problem. Anything suffers that fate with leaderboards. You give gamer a leaderboard, gamer going to find best way to get top leaderboard. And to ask DE to make a real focused effort on this would require us to go without content for years, which in my subjective opinion would kill the game. So that is something that I think should never be done. I can honestly say, though, I used to think differently in the beginning years of my game, but after playing the game for so many years and looking at player numbers while playing the game and what actually affects those numbers, I would say if they were to do this shift, it would probably be the worst choice Warframe could make as a whole. As well, if the game wasn't made for it, they wouldn't have put a focus onto it at one time, and then when they stopped focusing on it, they also left all the missions in there without putting a cap on them. And please don't act like putting a cap on a mission is impossible when we literally have missions with a time left counter on it. They could have easily just switched the timers around and put a hard cap that forces you to leave at X point, like the game actually used to be, by the way. As well, why would acolytes be at the point now to where, as far as we know, they scale endlessly? I fought the highest level recorded mob in the game at level 12,380, and it was a malice acolyte, not that the particular type of acolyte matters. And at one time, when they first made acolytes and introduced them into Steel Path, after a good little bit after they made Steel Path, they had them stay at level 125. They never scaled past it. Then they made them scale 5 levels every spawn, and now they scale at 10 levels every spawn. And finally, what else do you expect us to do with all the power creep, at least finally for not made for in the game? aspect of it. But what else are we supposed to do with all the power creep in the game? Besides see how consistent we can stay at higher level content and how long our loadout can last for. There's really nothing else to do in the game once you complete a lot of the game as a whole. If they were to take out endurance, the only thing that would be left would be speedrunning, which I think would isolate even more people in the game. Now, as for people who tell me that it's boring, who cares about it, let it die anyways. That is your opinion, and I'm glad Warframe has content for you to enjoy. But the one thing I would say is, how about you stop thinking about yourself for a moment in time, and instead support everybody having content that they can enjoy so that we can all spend money on the game, allowing for higher chances of even more players wanting to join the game because of different content that Warframe releases via having more funds for research and development. Endurance makes the game unbalanced is another thing that I've heard, and I feel like this argument is another one that really isn't taken into much thought, as it's not endurance that creates the imbalance, it's enemy scaling that can create imbalance, which in my opinion was killed as an argument after the enemy EHP nerf. Now what we have really is just a sandbox to have fun in and test until burnout hits. They could have easily just stopped the scaling way earlier than they did if they wanted to, which at one point they actually did stop the scaling of HP, but they decided to remove against the cap because players felt the game was too easy. Another argument that I've heard, and this would be more or less the final argument, is that endurance creates a very toxic environment full of elitists in the game. This one I feel like is not endurance that creates the problem, but the community that creates the problem. As when I started the game, endurance runners were actually really chill, friendly, and wanting to teach individuals. It wasn't until around near the end-ish of 2019 that really all of that started to change with a whole new group of players coming in. A lot of these players were extremely toxic, extremely meta-heavy. If you didn't run the builds that they said you needed to run, you were a terrible person and all of this, yada yada. I'm being hyperbolic with the terrible person, but you were a terrible player and everything, and you didn't know what you were talking about. So this is not an actual situation that becomes a problem from endurance, because even Eidolons have this issue. You name it in the video game you play, if there's a situation where you can min-max, which there is in pretty much every video game, there are going to be levels of toxic individuals that you have to deal with. And that is unfortunately that's part of being in the world that we live in. So in my subjective opinion, I don't feel that endurance is the problem in Warframe or anything like that. I don't feel like it gives too much loot per hour. I don't feel like it creates an imbalance in the game, like it creates a toxic environment. I feel like the only reason why we don't have a lot of people running it is because there's too much persecution and punishment going on for it. I think if we didn't have the punishment, would it still be a smaller aspect of the game? Yes. But would it be such a small aspect that people can feel the need to say that it doesn't matter and we should just let it die? I don't feel like it would be that small. I feel like it would be a lot more vibrant overall. But let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below, and I do hope y'all take care, stay safe, stay humble, be open, and as always, never stop searching. Peace, everybody.